My sister Brittany looked at my freezing hands and said, "You're ruining the aesthetic. Sierra, go wait in the shed until the guests leave." She slammed the door of my $3.5 million ski lodge in my face. The heavy oak vibrated with the force of her entitlement. I stood there, wind whipping snow against my cheeks, staring at the glowing glass facade of a house she thought she owned because of a piece of paper she forged 3 years ago. Inside, I could see the warmth of the fire, the sparkle of expensive wine glasses, and my family celebrating a theft they called a legacy. She didn't know that the piece of paper she was so proud of wasn't a deed. It was a signed confession to a federal crime, and I held the digital key to lock them all inside with it. Before I tell you how I locked them inside and turned the heating off, drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. I waited in the snow for 11 minutes before the service door clicked open. My mother, Susan, stood there, not with a blanket or a warm drink, but with a trash bag. "Put your coat in this," she said, her voice tight with the annoyance of someone whose perfect evening has been interrupted by reality. "You're dripping wet. Do not track slush onto the hardwood." I stepped inside. The transition was physical, the biting cold of the mountain air instantly replaced by the smell of roasted turkey, sage, and expensive cedar wood. This was my house. I had bought the land under a shell company. I had approved the architectural blueprints for the vaulted ceilings. I had selected the imported Italian marble for the kitchen island where my father, Richard, was currently leaning, laughing at something Brittany was saying to her phone. "Finally," my father said, glancing at me. He didn't look me in the eye. He looked at my boots. "Grab 'em up, Sierra." Someone spilled Pinot Noir near the fireplace. "And try to stay out of the frame. Brittany is doing a live stream for her followers." I walked into the great room. It was a masterpiece of winter luxury. A 20-foot Christmas tree glittered in the corner. The fire roared in the stone hearth. And there was my family, dressed in cashmere and silk, feasting on a catered meal they hadn't paid for, in a house they hadn't bought. Brittany was posing with a glass of champagne, the ring light reflecting in her eyes, telling her audience about her winter getaway. I knelt to scrub the wine stain from the rug. As I watched them, the old hurt didn't come. Instead, a cold, clinical understanding settled over me. For years, I had wondered why they chose her. Why? When I graduated with honors and built a logistics empire from nothing, they still looked at me like a utility bill. While Brittany, who had never held a job for more than 6 months, was treated like a prize. It wasn't a mystery. It was simple economics. In the business of our family, Brittany was a liability, but she was a shiny one. She was the jewelry they wore to convince the world they were wealthy. She was the vanity project. I was the asset. I was the engine in the basement that kept the lights on. I paid the bills. I fixed the mistakes. I covered the debts. And narcissists always hate the asset. They hate the asset because every time they look at me, they are reminded that they cannot afford their own lives. I am the overhead cost of their delusion. "Sierra," Brittany snapped, lowering her phone. "You missed a spot. God. Can you do anything right without making a face? You're ruining the vibe." My father chuckled, swirling his wine. "She's just jealous. Britt, some people are born to shine, and some are born to, well, serve. It's better she learns her place now." I stood up. The rag in my hand was stained red with wine. It looked like blood. I looked at the 3 of them bloated with my food, warmed by my fire, sheltered by my money. The asset was about to liquidate the inventory. "I'm not scrubbing the floor, Dad," I said, my voice quiet, but cutting through the laughter. "And you aren't finishing that wine." My father's face went that mottled shade of purple I associated with missed curfews and forgotten chores. He set his wine glass down on the marble island with a sharp clack. "Excuse me," he said, his voice dropping an octave. "I think you need to remember who you're talking to, young lady. We are the reason you aren't living on the street. We are the reason you have anything. You're the reason I have trust issues, Richard." I corrected him. And you're currently trespassing. Trespassing, Brittany laughed. A high, brittle sound. God. You are so delusional. It's sad. Really. Mom. Show her. My mother sighed. The long, suffering sigh of a martyr, and reached into her designer handbag. She pulled out a thick, cream-colored envelope and slid it across the counter. It stopped inches from my hand. We didn't want to do this tonight, Susan said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. We wanted a nice family dinner, but since you're being difficult, we need to make this official. You see, Sierra, we know you've been struggling mentally. We couldn't let you manage a property like this. You'd lose it in a month. I opened the envelope. Inside was a document on heavy legal bond paper, a deed of gift. It was dated 3 years ago. It transferred ownership of the property from Sierra Hansen to Brittany Hansen. At the bottom was a signature that looked remarkably like mine. If I had signed it while suffering a stroke, we did it for your own good, my father said, crossing his arms. We backdated it to ensure the asset was protected. Now, to be a good girl and sign this waiver confirming the transfer, and we'll buy you a bus ticket back to the city. Or don't. And we call the sheriff to remove a trespasser. I looked at the paper. It wasn't just a forgery. It was a masterpiece of stupidity. They honestly believed this piece of paper was a shield. They thought they had won. I didn't scream. I didn't tear up the paper. I folded it neatly and put it in my pocket. So, you're admitting you signed this, that you transferred the ownership 3 years ago. We're admitting we saved this family's legacy from your incompetence. Brittany sneered. Now get out. You're bringing down the mood. I looked at them one last time. The firelight danced on their faces, making them look flushed and victorious. They were so confident. So comfortable in their theft. I'm not leaving, I said softly. I pulled my phone from my pocket. I didn't open Uber. I opened an app with a black interface and a single logo, a mountain peak. My thumb hovered over the large red button at the center of the screen, labeled Security Protocol Lockdown. What are you doing? My mother asked, her eyes narrowing. Calling a friend. Nobody is coming for you. Sierra. No, I said. I'm calling the house. I pressed the button. The reaction was instantaneous. A heavy, mechanical thud echoed from the front door as the commercial-grade deadbolt slammed home. The soft, ambient jazz playing, from the speakers cut out, replaced by a low, rhythmic hum. Then, the windows. The floor-to-ceiling glass walls that offered a panoramic view of the storm suddenly darkened as heavy steel security shutters descended from the eaves. They slammed into place with the sound of a guillotine, sealing us off from the world. And then the lights changed. The warm, inviting gold of the chandeliers flickered and died, instantly replaced by a pulsing, emergency red. The room was bathed in the color of a warning sign. What did you do? Brittany shrieked, dropping her phone. The ring light cast eerie shadows in the red gloom. You aren't in a home, I said, my voice calm over the rising panic. You are in the corporate headquarters of Sierra Holdings LLC, and you just triggered the anti-theft protocol. Turn it off, my father bellowed, his voice cracking with a panic I had never heard before. He threw his shoulder against the front door. But the commercial-grade maglocks didn't even vibrate. Sierra, you are breaking the law. This is unlawful imprisonment. No. Richard, I said, leaning back against the marble island, the red emergency lighting casting long, sharp shadows across the room. It's asset protection. And you're the threat. Brittany was hyperventilating near the Christmas tree. My stream cut out, she whispered, staring at her phone. The Wi-Fi is gone. Why is the Wi-Fi gone? Because I cut the residential line, I explained calmly. The house is now running on a secure, encrypted server. No signals in. No signals out. Just us. My mother marched up to me, the forged deed clutched in her hand like a weapon. Stop this nonsense immediately. We have the paper. We have the proof. This house belongs to Brittany, We signed it over 3 years ago. I took the envelope from her hand. She let go of it easily. Too shocked to resist. I pulled out the document again. Deed of gift. I read aloud, my voice echoing in the sealed room. I, Sierra Hansen, transfer all rights, title, and interest in the property located at 1400 Aspen Peak Drive to Brittany Hansen. I looked up at them. It's a very convincing forgery. Mom, you even got the loop on my S right. But there's a problem. A structural problem. The date is correct, my father shouted. We checked the records. You checked the public address, I said. You didn't check the title chain. You see, this document attempts to transfer property from Sierra Hansen, the individual, to Brittany Hansen. But here's the thing. Sierra Hansen doesn't own this house. She never has. They stared at me, the silence stretching tight enough to snap. I didn't buy this lodge. I continued, stepping closer to them. I founded a company called Sierra Holdings LLC. That company bought the land. That company hired the architects. That company holds the deed. I'm just the managing director. In the eyes of the law, I am an employee. I dropped the forged deed onto the counter. It landed with a soft, insignificant slap. You can't give away what you don't own. Dad, it's like forging a bill of sale for a neighbor's car. It doesn't make the car yours. It just proves you tried to steal it. That's semantics, Brittany stammered, her voice shrill. It's the same thing. You own the company. So you own the house. It is not the same thing, I said, my voice dropping to a lethal whisper. It is the corporate veil. And you just crashed right into it. This document isn't a deed, Brittany. It's a confession. It proves you had intent to defraud. You've been living here, eating my food, burning my wood, thinking you were owners. But you aren't owners. You're trespassers in a commercial facility. And in the state of Colorado, commercial burglary carries a mandatory prison sentence. My father's face went from purple to a ghostly, terrified white. He looked at the red lights pulsing on the walls. Then, at the steel shutters blocking the snow. For the first time, he realized this wasn't a family dispute. He wasn't arguing with his daughter. He was arguing with a corporation that had just caught him breaking and entering. You wouldn't, he whispered. We're your family. I'm an employee protecting company assets, I said coldly. And I'm about to show you exactly how much this gift of yours is actually worth. Squatters' rights, Brittany shrieked, her voice bouncing off the steel shutters. She was grasping at straws, desperate to salvage her narrative. I've been staying here for 3 years. I paid the electric bill last month. I have rights, even if the deed is fake. I have possession. My father seemed to latch onto this lifeline. His color returned. Just a fraction. She's right, he said, straightening his spine. Possession is 9/10 of the law. Sierra, Brittany has established residency. You can't just kick her out. And if we go to court, we'll argue that your company was negligent, that you abandoned the property to her. I looked at them, at the desperate, clawing greed that had replaced any semblance of family loyalty. They were willing to burn me to the ground to keep a house they hadn't earned. You really want to be the owner? Brittany, I asked, my voice soft, almost gentle. She claimed she owned everything and threatened to sue me into ruin. I calmly laid out the forged deed, handed her a pen, and pretended to surrender, inviting her to sign and make the transfer official. Greed overpowered her suspicion. Until I mentioned the federal tax lien. I explained that the property was a loss leader under my holding company, with years of unpaid commercial and luxury taxes. 6 months earlier, the IRS had placed a $450,000 lien on the house. If she signed the deed and claimed ownership retroactively, the debt would become personal. Her accounts, income, and car would be seized, and the house taken anyway. She dropped the pen. My parents realized the trap. They couldn't claim the house without financial destruction, and they couldn't stay without committing crimes. Desperate, Brittany faked a pregnancy emergency, collapsing on the floor while my parents accused me of killing her baby. I didn't react. Instead, I pointed out the 4K security camera recording everything. I played footage from earlier Brittany drinking expensive wine and joking about going back on birth control next week. The lie collapsed instantly. Sirens approached as the automated alarm dispatched police for a burglary. When deputies arrived, I identified myself as the managing director and pressed charges for trespass, forgery, and fraud. As they were arrested, my mother begged for mercy. I told her calmly that she'd fired her daughter years ago. I was just the landlord evicting a bad tenant. When the house returned to silence, I reset the system, poured myself a glass of wine, and deleted their contacts. I didn't feel lonely. I felt free. They wanted $1 million view. They got $1 million debt. A fair trade. If you've ever had to be the villain in their story to be the hero in yours, you're not alone.